Okay, so tell me, how did you think today's lesson went?
So I think it went pretty well. So I'm really trying to work on the objective
Yes.
portion of the lesson, and I feel like it's going better. I'm stating the objective at the beginning and having them state it back to me, which is helping them understand what we're actually trying to accomplish and do for that day. So, really trying to work on that portion of the lesson plan, and I feel like it's getting smoother and it's getting more natural to me.
So what benefits do you see in having a learning target and then stating that objective? Do you see the value? Are you seeing or do you think it's something you have to put on your board? How are you using that, or do you see value in that?
I see the value from my perspective because it helps me stay on task and know what I'm supposed to accomplish with the students. And this is where I also need to work on as well, but I don't see the students are understanding why they're having to repeat it back to me. They just think it's something, oh, we have to do it.
So it's becoming more of like a routine where we're mimicking our teacher.
Correct.
It's more like a parrot thing. So they're not really understanding their purpose. Have you ever explained to them what a learning target is and why and what it is there for?
I actually have not, so that's a great idea.
Because you really could say that, why, or maybe ask them, why do you think Miss Lawley is having you repeat these words? Because it's fun, because because she makes us. Okay, well, let's talk about that, So maybe telling them the purpose, just like you're telling the learning target is the purpose of what we're learning, maybe they need to know the purpose of a target too,
Okay.
like why we're doing it, what the point is. You could use me. Well, when Miss Dunsmore comes in, she should be able to ask you, not me, what are we doing? What are we learning today? And if your answer is I don't know, that means you didn't understand our learning target of what we're supposed to be doing. So you can maybe phrase it to them in that idea that any adult or any person who comes in here should be able to ask you what you're learning, and you should know. And if you don't, because that's what our target should be, matching what we're doing. Maybe to see if they can make that connection, because if they're not making the connection, you're right, it's probably not as valuable to them as it could be.
Okay, that's a good point.
Okay. So tell me about your learning targets. How are you writing them? How are you coming to them?
So, for
Dr. Hoffman, please call the office. Dr. Hoffman, please call the office.
okay. So I am just writing them we have structured curriculum. So sometimes I'm pulling them from the curriculum. So like the reading lesson that was today, I can identify the author's purpose. That's just basically coming from the standard. So what the standard is, and then it's just I can identify that standard.
Okay, so you're trying to put what I hear you saying is you're kind of using the state standard, but you're putting it more in a kid-friendly language term so they can understand it.
Right.
Okay, and are you writing these with your team? Are you writing them by yourself? Because learning targets can be kind of confusing, and they can be. But it is if you think of a learning target, it's the big thing that you want your students to be able to know and do. So I'm just curious of how you're creating them.
So I pull them directly from the curriculum.
Okay.
And then put them more in a second grade voice.
Okay.
But that's where I'm pulling them. I do think my objectives could be a little bit more detailed.
Okay.
That very vague. Like my learning objective for the reading this week was I can identify author's purpose. Well, I think it could be a little more vague, like I can identify author's purpose. I will know that I have accomplished this or whatever by XYZ.
Yes.
So,
I like that you're saying that, because yes, they can be vague, and I think the more detailed you make them, the more students know where they're going to go. Some teachers have used like the by statement. I can identify author's purpose by stating the 3 different types, or by knowing the differences between a persuade, an inform, and an entertain. Like you might even build some of that vocab right back into your target a little bit.
Okay.
So they're using it. And what I heard you just kind of touch on is the other thing that's really kind of like the newer thing with learning targets is that success criteria. And that's I know I can do it if, I know I've got it if. So not only do we want them to know what they're about to do, we also want them to know how they're going to get there and if they're successful getting there. So it's all those things, and really it's just kind of, to me, like a lesson plan.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about NTAS Standard 1 when we're talking about the knowledge of your content so that you, and what happens when you see growth in the development of your students, how you're planning for those lessons. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
So, for reading, so let's talk reading first, and we'll talk about. So for reading, we do our fluency testing. So, how many words they can read a minute, and based on where they should their benchmark scores.
Okay.
So that's how we really monitor where they should be in reading and at what level we should put them at.
Okay. So you use their fluency score, their words per minute score, to determine their reading levels.
Correct.
Okay. What happens after you determine their reading levels? What happens after you get a fluency score? What do you do with that data?
So we break them up into different groups. So they either go to intensive or strategic or on grade level. So the intensive goes to a very basic, like start kindergarten level learning sounds in
Okay.
another class, and then the intensive, the strategics go to a different class, and it's still the sounds and blending. And then if they at grade level, they stay in my class, and we do more comprehension.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you break the kids up by their fluency score, and they're into 3 blocks, depending on the score. They're either on grade level, strategic, or intensive. Then they are moved to a different teacher's classroom to get serviced at their level
For the intervention.
for the intervention. But interventions during your core reading block?
Correct.
Okay. So some of your lower kids never get core reading?
Correct.
All right. How do you feel about that?
I don't feel great, and it's something as a second grade team that we are very concerned about and looking for a solution to fix that problem. We've thrown things out there how the strategic kids at least could get some of it within their class, so that they're at least learning the strategies and the skills for second grade level. So we're working out a solution.
Because what I'm curious is, are you seeing growth? Are you seeing lots of movement and growth with the kids who are removed from core reading and getting that the intervention at their level? Are you seeing those students move? Like, how often are you fluency testing them to see the growth from one to another?
We test weekly. So strategic and intensive kids get tested weekly. Strategic get tested twice a month, so every other week.
So are your guys' groups fluid? Can kids move out of strategic into core when they reach the right words per minute?
Correct. Yes, they can.
Okay. So, and who's keeping all that data? Do you know, where are you keeping all that information?
So it is stored, there's a drive, there's a Google Doc, it's a spreadsheet, and so all of second grade is within this spreadsheet. So the teachers are responsible for testing them and making sure that data gets into the spreadsheet,
Okay.
and then it's looked at by the instruction specialist.
Okay.
Also on that same doc is their benchmarks for spring, or for fall, winter.
Their
and then
scores.
Their benchmark,
So
their
I'm
tested scores.
I'm curious, are you guys testing, so what about your on grade level kids? How often do they get RCBM'd?
Once a month.
Okay, so we're making sure we're keeping them at grade level.
Right.
Have you ever had kids fall behind?
No, the kids that are going back and forth. Well, yes. So we have this block of kids that aren't strategic, but they're not on grade level, and it's like a couple kids, and it's a couple kids in every single class in second grade that are too high for strategic, but they're too low for.
So where are you keeping them?
They're in the classroom.
I mean, I feel like that's probably where they should be. Because if they're very close to getting that content, I would want them exposed, but that can be a hard one.
And those are the students, though, that we're seeing. They go up and down.
Up and down in general. So tell me about, so you teach the core, right? You teach the on grade level part. So tell me how you are monitoring your growth, and like how do you see it? Like if your kids are learning, tell me how you are evaluating what they're doing in here.
So we give instruction Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays the summative assessments.
Okay.
So we are really seeing basically how they're doing based on their Friday tests. The test, it's a standard curriculum, so it's a curriculum based pre-made test.
Okay, it's a pre-made test that comes right from the book, right from the
Right.
series.
Right.
Okay, the Basil.
So it's supposed to test if they are picking up the strategy or the skill. But not always, to me, the best indicator if our kids have picked it up.
So you don't feel like these weekly tests that you give every Friday, they're very routine. Every Friday, from Monday through Thursday, you do this, this, and this. Friday is the test. What I hear you saying is you don't feel like the tests always correlate to the skill, and you don't really know if the kids are really learning what they were taught.
right. And in the test, so here's the problem with the test. The test goes over phonics, which they get. The
Right.
phonics part is great. That part is great. Grammar, which we don't focus on in this school.
Okay, so there's a grammar component.
There's usually 3 questions on grammar.
Do you not get rid of those?
No.
Those points still count against them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's usually like, what can we just jam down their throat so that they can get these questions right? But they're not learning because they're just memorizing.
Right.
It's
You're trying. It's
short-term.
called teaching to the test. You're
Yeah.
trying just to get them exactly what the test says.
Yeah. And then the skill. So there's usually a comprehension question or that goes over the skill. So they read a story and then they answer a couple questions. And then there's vocabulary.
Okay. So you're using the program. You're doing it with fidelity. You're doing what the program says, but you're not really sure if you're feeling like you know where your students are at academically or with the standard.
And that's the problem. I mean, I can judge what students are really catching it. I mean, you just kind of
Yes.
you learn that.
Okay.
But I don't know if those students, yes, I know they're smart enough to know the test, but are they really picking up what I've taught? And it's really hard to understand that with just this one assessment.
thing.
Yeah.
So what do you think it might look like if you did something different? Or do you think there's something, like, is there anything that you could supplement or maybe add to? Is there any way you could, how do you think you could find out more about your kids?
I think, and not that I think homework's the answer, but so we've started with the work of, some other second grade teachers, we've started doing more like grammar type worksheets, and then including on that more worksheets about that have the skill for that week. And we do it in class, so it's really just kind of them, like this week I started it, had them do it on their own, and then as a class we went over the answers. So it's not really testing to see right now of students, I mean it's just getting kind of them familiar with doing kind of worksheets, because this is kind of a new, even though it seems archaic, it's
Right.
kind of new to my class,
Right.
because we have never used like that kind of stuff. So I think getting that more into either homework or like quiz, maybe quick checks, quiz type stuff, could show, are they really picking up that skill?
Yeah, I like what you just said about like a quick check, like a quiz. It doesn't have to be 5 pages. It doesn't have to be drawn out. It doesn't have to be something very pretty that you make for 6 hours. It could just be a couple of questions you write on a piece of paper, maybe like a Wednesday mid-check. Give me 2 words that tell me if someone's informing. But or because I see on your anchor chart over there that you have given them ways to determine the difference between a P&I and an E. So maybe on a Wednesday, you've taught it for 2 days. Can they name any of those elements that would tell you the difference between the stories? And you could do just something really quick and easy like that I think would be more informative in real time. And then if the kids aren't understanding something, you don't have to wait till Friday where they fail the test
Yeah,
to think you have to reteach everything too, because I think that could probably be frustrating.
yeah.
It's going to take more work on your part, and it's going to take a little more thinking, but I think, do you think, I don't, do you think it'd have a good impact, or?
I think it's definitely worth a shot, and as much practice, because they don't get, with the way, because we plan our lessons are planned in advance as a team. So our reading lessons are already planned out. The way our lesson plans are planned, are created, they don't get a lot of practice at all with the skill. It's just all really, it's all just really instruction, me up talking, asking questions, and one person answer, or if we do the table, it's them sharing with their partner. They don't have practice really ever. So I think it's extra practice, and I think that's what they need, especially
So how are they going to get this extra practice? What are you going to have to do that? Like,
create like worksheets and stuff like that, which went really well. So took your advice on starting to plan Wednesdays versus Fridays, which helped because last week on Wednesday was able to start, all that planning and create those worksheets and get them copied and all that for this week. And that's helped a ton. So, because and they started doing that this week.
that's awesome.
So, I mean, I think it is going to be more work on my part, more paper, but I think that.
Yeah, but it's like instead of standing up there just talking, you're going to know if you're being effective. 'Cause I think we're all here to be effective. You're not here just to listen to yourself talk all day long. And I think you really want to be an effective teacher and you want to know if your kids are learning. And I think one thing that we find out about curriculum is it's not perfect. There is no one set book. There's no one set thing that's going to give us everything our students need. So we have to get a little creative as a teacher, and we're going to have to supplement and find those different ways to get the content to them. That's differentiating for them, and that's important too, is giving them what they need so they can reach that skill and reach that. And if everybody's getting the same thing, you're probably not reaching all of your students. They're going to have to be some variation. And I think that's just like with curriculum. Yes, it's all there for you and it's very pretty, but there's no guarantee it's doing everything you need it to do. So lots of times you have to do exactly what you're starting to do, which is supplement, find more resources that hit the same skill, the same idea, that give me a better picture if my students are understanding this or not. So I think it's a little more time, but I think you'll feel better about it in the end. You'll feel more success.
Well, and this week, I mean, I feel like with making those extra things for them, I feel like we've touched a lot more on the skill than in the past, than we've done with lessons in the past.
Nice.
Just because it's basically drilling them into it. We're doing it different ways.
Yeah, different ways, different modalities, different ways to see it, different ways to talk about it. And like you said, giving them practice. Practice with something, not hearing something once or twice and expecting you to really have a deep understanding of it too.
Yeah.
Maybe what we can talk about next time also is how to get all your kids a little more actively engaged in your lesson so you don't feel like you're asking one question and have one kid answer. So we can talk about some strategies to kind of get your kids, like everybody involved in your question answering.
Okay.
We can talk about that. But I'm glad to see that you're using that data from Fluency to level your groups. And I know you have, you guys use the MComp for math, and that gives you a lot of information too. Are you using that data?
Yes, but since our focus is mainly at this K through 3rd on reading. We don't have intervention for math. So it's just a 30 to 45-minute block is what it's supposed to be, but it usually ends up only being 30. We have a 45-minute block max to teach math to the whole group, and there isn't time for intervention. So I will usually, we use Envision's curriculum, so everybody gets just the same lesson every day. And then the last 10 minutes of the lesson, I try, depending on, math is what usually gets cut if we have to do something, so our math is usually what gets cut. So if there is time, I will usually take the last 10 minutes and work with the kids. Like I have one sped kid in my class that's in my class during math time. So I'll pull him and usually work with him, and then I'll pull those lower kids from the MCOP scores and pull them and work with them.
So what's the rest of your kids doing while you're pulling that small group?
It's again, it's a very structured curriculum. So it's a worksheet. So every class they have a different worksheet. The first page is the I do, so I model with them.
Okay.
Second page is the we do. We do it as a class, and then the third page is the you do. So while they're doing the you do section is when I pull those kids.
Perfect. So during independent practice, you can pull the small group, that's a great strategy because you have a lot of time for intervention or small group. So you're really going to have to use that independent work time to pull the kids who need the work. Are you using the MCOP or are you using what you're doing in the moment to see who needs to be pulled back for the skill?
So we were heavily focused on addition and subtraction. So with that, I was using MCOMP because that's what MCOMP tests.
Right.
Now with we were with money, and then which money when we got into the addition and subtraction of it, it was MCOMP. But now geometry and then moving into measurements, it's not going to be based off of that. It's going to be based off who I can see is picking up from. I do a lot of quick checks for math. That is one thing I do a lot of. Number one, the whiteboards keep them entertained during math, and it's it's easy to use the whiteboards for math. So that's how I more differentiate students with math is by those quick checks and see who is getting it and who is not.
Perfect. Oh, perfect. That's you did. So you're doing check for understandings within your lesson before the lesson ends to know who you need to pull back.
Right.
Perfect. That's a great strategy because that's. I'm not like you said. There's not going to be time to have a separate math group or a separate math time. I think that's a good strategy. Good job.
So I think we're good.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay. Well, or do we talk about what we want to do for next time?
Oh.
So when I come back next time, I will observe. We can watch. We'll still look out for your objectives to make sure you're still implementing them. I will see maybe in that time you can talk to the kids about what their target is
Okay.
and what or the reason why you're doing that. What's the idea behind the learning target and why we state them.
Okay.
And maybe when I come in, I can see if they are grasping it. If they know why, I can kind of do that for
Perfect.
them.
Okay.
And then if you are doing, I would love to see some of your stuff that you're using to supplement the curriculum
Okay.
to get the skills, okay?
Okay.
All right, sounds good.